Hey guys, welcome to episode 10 of the Game Dev Discussion. It's the official podcast of the Dynasty Empire, and today we have Abel Dopazo on, the cinematic environment artist for Massive Games. How you doing, dude?
Hello. What's up?
Yeah, man, I'm good. I'm glad to have you on, man. I've been interested to have you on since I saw you join Massive. Cinematic environment artist, man. It's a unique title.
I know. It's kind of a weird one, to be honest. I've always been an environment artist, but now that I'm working specifically in the cinematics team, then I kind of needed a way to retain my origins in environment art and
Mm-hmm.
not just present myself as so much of a generalist, even though I kind of am now.
Mm-hmm.
So
You enjoying it? Good,
yeah.
good move. Role wise, I mean, not obviously company you always gonna enjoy a new company is always fun. But you like good move into the cinematic side of stuff. Is it very different?
Oh yes, it's
Oh
so
really?
much more different. Yes.
Okay, we'll dive into that a bit later on. So
Sure.
let's just start sort of straight out of uni, man. You like dive out of university in like I think it's 2017, straight out of
Mm-hmm.
university
Yeah.
into Playground Games, big studio in Leamington. Like, man, how did you manage that? Like, you went straight to an environment artist role, didn't you?
Yeah, so it was a bit weird as well, if I may say so, because I spent 1 year studying games design degree in Sheffield Hallam University, if anyone knows it.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it was then that year when I found about the Dynasty Discord, because I really wanted to get a group of people that really push themselves together to make better art. And it was because of that that I started pushing and pushing and pushing. And then after that first year, when I got noticed by Playground, so that's how I got in.
And what was it like working at Playground? So I know we're not going to get into specifics, but
Hmm.
for an environment artist on Playground, obviously you spend a lot of time on the Forza games. I
Yes,
I
that's
know a
right. Yeah.
few people. I know a few people I've spoken to as environment artists who sort of gone, "Oh, racing games. You know, there's not much stuff to do for an environment artist." But then I look through the work you did, and it's incredible. So I think there's a bit of a sort of a negative, not a negative stereotype, but misconception about environment art for racing games. I just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good topic because in the case of Forza Horizon, it's obviously open world. So it's not so much like games, like racing games where you just make track by track and you focus all your attention in very, very specific areas. So the actual road and the roadside and stuff, but you can actually go anywhere in the car. So you need to put effort into every single part of the map.
Yeah,
So I suppose it's not as close as working in other racing games. And yes, of course, the cars are still the protagonists, so they are going to have more attention to them. But still, I mean, it's fun. It's a challenge for sure.
what sort of so you've made scenes which you made a really nice Aztec scene, which is so good. Um,
Thanks.
what did you what sort of conscious decisions or like differences was there for because you obviously know environment art, the generic environment art when you make a scene and the sort of
Hmm.
pipelines and conventions. Was there any obvious differences you had to? Obviously, you got the thing that the car is the protagonist, like you said, but was there any
Yep.
obvious differences in your head when you were working on Forza?
Yeah, I think the main one would be that you need to take into account that the players are going to be absolutely flying around in
Ah,
like
yeah,
hypercars. So it's a little bit of a mix between game design and level art that needs to be some coordination there so that the players can go around and not necessarily crashing from 300 kilometers per hour to zero, which is quite frustrating,
mm-hmm.
and still make the spaces be believable and beautiful and composition wise that they're supposed to guide your view to focal points on different areas and stuff like that.
Mm. And so in terms of the actual asset creation, there wasn't much difference. There's more in just the level design itself, is where you had to sort of have a focus shift.
Yeah, I would say so. And in general, performance is also quite a big thing in all open world games, really, and in racing games as well, because you're going very fast. Stuff
Yeah.
needs to be rendered super fast as well. So it's in that regard, it's a bit of the worst case scenario for performance. You need to be very, very mindful of every single pixel of almost of textures you're painting and such.
Is that the type of stuff you as an art, like just talking from purely as an artist? It's quite open world. It's in terms of like it's organic. There's lots of foliage. There's like natural hard surface, not like sort of fancy hard surface. And your personal work itself, you've got a couple of examples of sort of that natural hard surface and organic and foliage and stuff. Is that something you as an artist gravitate quite naturally towards and like, or is it just happened to be what you were doing?
No, it just happened to be what I was doing at the moment, and I don't think I necessarily have a special attraction to just organics or just hard surface. I think it's more important to be switching from one to the other quite regularly, so that you can be experiencing both and not just become a one-trick pony sort of thing.
Yeah. So this is the interesting bit, and this is the bit I'm fascinated by. Your transition into the cinematic environment artist. So, firstly, was it you were just applying for a job at Massive, or was it like cinematic environment artist? I want to do that. Was it a conscious decision to go down that route?
Actually, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. It's got a funny story. Actually, I was supposed to go in for environment, like a regular, I guess you could say, environment art position. But I ended up not getting it, and I think it was the day after I got a call about a position that opened that he was also doing environment art, kind of, or so they said. In another team, I'm like, okay, I guess just pass me more details or something. And I got some more details. It seemed to have some, prop making and some environment art as well, a little bit of everything. It just so happens that it's stuff that was going to be put on cinematic things. And I said, sure, it's environment art, it's 3D, I can make this. And also, cinematic stuff is awesome. So I can probably even, not worry so much about resolution and poly count and all those things that we all worry about. So I said, sure. And I got there not really knowing what the hell I was doing.
Oh, that's amazing. So it's just like, environment art. Yeah, sure. It's cinematic environment art. Nah, it's fine. It's the exact same. That's great. What
I don't regret it though.
what like? So you actually don't have to worry about. I mean, okay, you always have to worry about performance to certain degrees. You can't take the piss. But is that not something that's like at the forefront? You don't have to worry about like, optimization and stuff like that
Mm, well,
within
some of the
reason.
stuff we do it's real time, and the thing is with cinematics, obviously you want them to look as pretty as possible, and if it's possible to make it look better than the game, which is quite hard considering that the division is gorgeous, then we go for it. But of course, if it's real time, you have the same limitations as with any other environment that you're building in the game. But for stuff that is pre-rendered, yeah, you can pretty much go crazy all
Oh
you want.
wow, that sounds sick. That sounds so good.
I know, I know.
You get to stretch your legs a little bit, then just sort of go right. Let's see what I can really do with this.
Yeah, I think it's also good to focus on the raw quality of the say the textures or your modeling, and not worry so much about the optimization part of it. Because if you really, really, really know how to do let's say an asset or a texture look perfect, even if it's way out of performance, it's easier for you to identify what parts can you optimize and still kind of look the way you really want, and not the other way around. If you just know how to make stuff work in performance but it doesn't really look that great, then I don't know.
That's a good point. I was just thinking that when you said you get to really focus on the quality, I bet that's
Yeah,
actually a very good like I don't want to call it therapeutic, but you
it is. It is actually that's
is that
it's
the
a
right
perfect
word?
word to describe it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can imagine it's just like right. You know, like I said, no performance. Just let's make this look as good as I could possibly do it. How good of an artist am I, really? And
Yeah.
you literally, it's almost like yeah, you just I've got to make this look as good as possible. There's nowhere to hide. There's no I've got to optimize it. And there's
Hmm.
excuses or anything like that. That's a really
Exactly.
interesting. Is it hard to do? Is it hard to switch off the optimization part of your brain, which you spent your education doing and you spent playground doing and your personal work? You're thinking about
Hmm.
optimization.
Uh, Not as much as I expected it to be, but you always have, because let's say that you're doing something for a game engine, you need to set up things in your head in a specific way, probably even before you start working on something. If you're doing pre-render stuff, you probably need to still use some older techniques. So it's different. It's not
Mm.
that you don't need to worry at all about stuff like setup or um, performance. Of course, you do need to still follow some guidelines, but definitely it's much better
So you have
to
any
follow.
so with that, so you said you just said there's different things you have to think about.
Yeah.
Has your skill set had to change much? So obviously you said yourself you can model,
Hmm.
you can texture. Have you had to introduce new pipeline stuff, new
Oh yes.
software? Just
Hmm.
can you talk about that at all? Like just out of curiosity, like what have you had to change in yourself?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say change, but definitely you have to like broaden your focus a little bit so that you can encompass the tasks that you are given or that are required to make the movies. So apart from say modeling and texturing, yes, you get to texture stuff in higher quality, so you can practice. But there's a lot of things that are not just oh you make it an asset and you texture on 0 to 1 space and it's going to be 8K because I don't care. It's not that easy. So it's a lot of involvement with stuff like Houdini to set up things in a way that uh, well, I have to be very vague
Yeah, no,
about
no, no,
this,
completely. I
but
completely understand. Don't worry, be as vague as it needs to be.
but we need to make systems for ourselves that allow us to have like maximum quality with a ton of assets if needed. Uh, I've also, funnily enough, have needed to go back to 2D. So I'm actually doing concept art as well, which
Oh,
is
really?
kind of strange for a 3D artist or an environment artist, but uh, I guess it pays off when you don't really know what you're doing in your early teens and you sort of jump around different disciplines. And now that you are more of a generalist, you're like, hey, I can kind of use that now.
That's sick. So, what sort? When you say doing concept art, you mean like designing keyframes and like silhouettes and this type of stuff?
Well, in my case, because I'm an environment artist, that's the stuff that I'm concepting. But yeah, so of course, before making something in 3D, you need the concept art. And in most cases you would get that given to you by a specific team, but
Mm-hmm.
because we are our own sort of uh, cell, I guess, inside the studio, then we just go at it with whatever needs to get done, really.
Man, that's sick. That sounds like I don't want to say dream, but like it's a bunch of stuff which you're doing, which I think will just enhance you as an artist. You know, forcing
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah, oh
forcing
definitely.
yourself to model stuff at high quality, doing texturing where like
Yeah,
right, every little detail matters, taking ownership over concept art. That all sounds sick, man. Like that sounds like the sort of stuff that's you coming out
it
the other
is.
end a better artist, not just environment artist, just a better artist.
Yeah, the thing with having to work on different tasks that are still all art related, like 2D or 3D, it doesn't really matter, is that your art fundamentals need to be on point. So I
Mm.
always have to go back to one or the other and, read on it, research, refine it, and practice. And uh, you kind of get this feeling of, oh my god, I need to know about the concept art, but I know so I also need to practice hard surface modeling and my rendering techniques, and how does this technique work, and I need to learn this new program. Oh my god, I can't do anything.
Do you get like are you having to do a lot of that in your own time in terms of the research stuff, or do you get you? I'm guessing you get allocated some time to R&D a little bit, or do you have to do most of that in your own time?
Yeah, we do have time, but because I'm just interested in the subjects, I just study them myself in free time as well, a lot of the times.
And I just want to touch on TJ was on last week, and we started to touch on some like
Oh yeah.
principles and fundamentals, and
Mm-hmm.
like it's a rabbit hole, like, and I'm fascinated by it. So since starting my new scene, I'm like, that's all I'm thinking about now. So I'm guessing that's something like for you, especially as a cinematic artist, like that's at the forefront of your focus is stuff
Yeah.
like the composition and all this sort of stuff. Was that weird
Yeah.
to like have that put so much at the forefront of your focus, or is it like you were just doing that naturally anyway?
Well, yeah, composition especially, and I would say it's the biggest one of the fundamentals that we get to apply. And actually, I would argue that lighting is as well, although they kind of feed into each other because lighting affects the values on the picture frame and changes the relationship between colors and shapes and the spaces that are in the screen. So that's composition as well.
What's some
And
of
there are
this?
other things such as anatomy, which is, yeah, it's an art fundamental, but in my case specifically, I don't really like, I'm interested in it, but thankfully I don't need to like know how every single muscle works or anything like
Yeah.
that.
What what's the? I don't mind if you hope. I hope you don't mind sharing some of this.
Hmm.
What's some of the stuff you think you've so since starting? Obviously, like I said, we're putting composition and light and all this sort of stuff at the forefront. Is there been any principles that you've sort of you've learned since starting and gone, oh, holy shit, this this is a game, like not a game changer, but like this is one of the things I think everyone should know. Has there been any moments like that, or has it been like tiny tidbits of knowledge that just all feed into each other?
Yeah, I think it's more of the second, to be honest. Unless you are just starting to get into the fundamental stuff, then yeah, it's little things here and there. And what I really like about fundamentals is the fact that you can summarize them quite well, and you can get like someone that doesn't know about them, they can get a pretty good idea. But once you start getting into, I don't care which one is it, but once you get into one of them, you can go for hours and hours and days and months. So you're always learning because each member of the team has a different experience, have learned the fundamentals in a different way. So they get little snippets of this is how I think about this, and you're like, huh, I've never thought of it that way.
Right, so just so I understand what you mean, so you like you think it's quite you if you're new to the whole thing, you like you can understand the broader concept of what a composition is, i.e., leading lines and all this sort of stuff. But as soon as you start to
Yeah.
dive into the nitty gritty, it's like right, this each one's a rabbit hole in themselves.
Yes, and also the more you know about these things, the more you can know when to break it, because they're not technically rules; they're just guidelines, really. And that's also quite useful, I would say.
When would you? Sorry, I've never thought of it in that way. When would you? Is there like an example you'd say where you'd be okay with breaking it?
Oh yes. There's a ton of it. It really depends on what you're going after in terms of storytelling, but you can certainly use breaking the rules to your advantage. Say, for example, let's say we have a sequence of um, someone that is being followed by someone dangerous, and they're kind of catching up and stuff like that. You would say, okay, I'm gonna use like shaky cameras, so the composition is all a little bit fumbled about, and you get that the feeling of urgency, I guess. Uh, you can really go crazy with cameras and do things that otherwise you think this is just not okay. If your goal is to convey a specific emotion of, say, what the hell is going on here, you can do that by breaking the rules because your brain is expecting a lot of things, say rule of thirds or leading lines. So once you have built up that expectation that pretty images are just like this, and then you break it, it's just like when you use color and value contrast in an image. You can really draw the eye to a specific place. In this case, lead your brain to feel a different way. So it's quite interesting.
It's, you know what, you've just triggered something in my head. I've just remembered. I since sort of like started reading this sort of stuff, I've come across a lot of articles on the Batman The Dark Knight, and some of the stuff they do with the Joker to make you sort of the audiences aware that he's like a chaotic force. And you just reminded me of saying stuff like that, like breaking it, like they do it with music. So I was watching a bit about Hans Zimmer, and he purposely used notes next to each other which are not meant to be played next to each other for his score.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And because it sounds unnatural, because they're not meant to be played together, you get this natural feeling to the audience that the Joker is this unnatural thing. So yeah, now you mention that, I've never really thought of it like that, but now it's just memory think of the Dark Knight, and a lot of ways they did that to get the Joker to feel like this chaotic force was by breaking rules.
And the thing is, you have to think that because we are in a way restricted to the frame that you are seeing, as opposed to you walking around in a 3D space, looking around with your camera, going crazy. I'd say it's a restriction, but you can really use that to your advantage because you can frame stuff in a very specific way. And so because of that, we can draw a lot of knowledge from feature film. And there's so many good examples of those breaking rules things. There's many very, very good YouTube channels that dedicate their time to analyze movies, whether it's camera techniques or the lenses or the use of color. Yeah, it's great. I actually got addicted to watching some of the YouTube channels because super cool.
I think I'm in that at the moment. I'm watching videos on films I didn't even like, and like gaining an appreciation for them. Even though I didn't really like the movie, I'm gaining an appreciation for them, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's really cool. And like, yeah, like a lot of Chris Nolan's films I'm watching again, and I'm like, these are incredible.
One of the best, yes.
Do you focus a lot on film? So I'm guessing, I don't want to say you move away from games, but in terms of you as an artist, do you think you have to sort of, so like when I'm trying to get inspiration for a next piece, I play a lot of games. Games are the medium I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Do you think you have to sort of switch your focus a little bit towards like, okay, I need to be inspired by films, because you are essentially making films, even though they're short films, and they're happening in the game world, they are still films. So do you think you have to sort of analyze and focus more on them?
You don't necessarily have to. In my particular case, I just happen to have gotten really into it because I don't know, I enjoy it and I didn't really know I liked it that much. So I do get inspiration from movies because the reason why I got into environment art was because I am really into storytelling. And so those creating environments, when people make micro stories by the way they place the props, and this place needs to feel like it was lived in, and maybe they use the space to storage the weapons, and constructing all these stories, it was probably the main reason why I got into environment art. But when I got the idea of, hey, you can actually build stories just by using the camera and using sequence and using all these techniques that films use to convey whatever story you're trying to tell even better. So I just happened to get into it more.
Tell you what, it's a damn hard skill, because I just think, I said this last week, you're basically having to manipulate subconscious, what's the word, subconscious decisions by the audience, because like you said, the shaky cam, the audience doesn't, so like when an audience member sees like a bad guy and he has a gun and he looks bad, it's like the audience members are seeing him and consciously making a decision, he's a threat, he has a gun, he's a bad guy. Whereas when you're having to do stuff like, oh, it's a shaky cam and it's conveying this emotion, the audience isn't going, oh, that's happening, therefore this is happening. It's just a subconscious tick. And that's why I think you. I have so much like admiration for people who do cinematics, film, all this type of stuff, or who even do the composition stuff, because they're conveying emotions that aren't conscious, and you have basically having to manipulate them. That's like a ridiculous skill.
And there's a whole range of intensity that you could go with it. So you can be very, very bold and in your face kind of thing. Actually, the things we do in television is kind of a perfect example for that, because it's very intense in that regard. I don't know if you've seen the stuff we've done, but
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
and you can be very, very subtle as well. Like a lot of the films, usually those films aren't necessarily super popular,
Yeah.
or because it's not easy to get into something like that. But that's one of the reasons why I really like these YouTube channels that analyze movies, and you get to see all those little subconscious things that you just didn't think about, but they're true.
Yeah, there's one which
From
is
stuff like simple thing like the use of warm and cold colors, which is like, duh, yeah, we all know about it, to really stuff that doesn't really seem to make much sense, but it just works. Like a character walking from left to right is supposed to be you reflected as this character moving forward, as opposed to a character moving right to left in the screen, which is something moving towards you, or an enemy moving towards the main character, and stuff like that. It's quite psychological if you really want to delve into it.
Oh man, there's a so coming back to Dark Knight, there's another one which I noticed, and it's one which at first I was like, that's bullshit, that's not true, that's not what goes through. And then I watched it back and I was like, oh my god, it's true. It's the one with Commissioner Gordon, Batman, and Harvey Dent on a rooftop. I suppose spoilers, but where at the beginning when they've just
Spoilers.
been I mean, if you haven't watched it by now, then like shame on you. Go lock yourself in a cupboard and watch the Dark Knight series.
For real.
But it's the camera's basically spinning around them, and it's constantly circling them. It's just after the Joker's just tricked all of them and like led them astray. And I never thought much of that scene. And then when the guy was breaking it down, he's like, yeah, because he's spinning around. It's like the chaotic nature of the Joker is like a tornado ruining these guys' lives.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, that's not what's happening. Then I watched it with that sort of view lens, and I was like, oh, okay, no, okay, yeah, that legit is what's happening. Holy shit, that's a whole new way of thinking about this movie.
Yeah, a lot of the things you're like, oh, these pretentious pricks just making excuses for their weird.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, no, I mean, everything's there for a reason, like every single frame, it's there, and it's been planned for months and rehearsed and redone and changed. So yeah.
There's a small trailer for the Division 1 which I missed because I was talking to the guys in the Dynasty Discord about. Have you seen the Daredevil Netflix series?
I have not actually.
Okay. There's in every single season there's one shot where it's like this big fight scene, but it's one camera, like no cuts or anything, and it follows him. So the first season is the best one, where like basically goes through the
I
hallway.
love those ones.
Yeah, and he's just beating up all these guys, like, and it's one shot. It's an amazing scene. And I was mentioning that to the guys in Discord, and they're like, have you seen the Division 1? I was like, no, not seen anything like that. And there's one where they're basically like going through a room, like a flat, and it's like, I think it's someone's child dies, and then this guy's family dies, and he gets robbed, and then he ends up topping himself. And I was like,
is this like 3D or?
Yeah, 3D. It's a Division trailer. I'm sure one of the guys will link in chat.
Is this where like the first time that people got to see the sort of the gameplay and what the game was about?
It's not gameplay. There's no. So basically, it was like a time lapse audio, but it was just going through a hotel, an apartment. There's no characters, but it's like a bed, and it goes over to the sink, and you hear like the guy's got pills where he's like suffering from depression, and he's crying, and then he stops himself, and I was like, oh my god, that's one of my favourite shots ever, and I missed it in the Division 1. Like, I didn't see that bit of marketing material. And there's another one they did. It's like CCTV footage. It's like it's showing. And okay, you might be able to answer this for me. It's the most tense, like, way of doing it.
This is referring to like the one that you see like 4 camera stuff at the same time, right? And Yeah.
And they chase them up the stairs to the like dead end, and then one of the guys gets beat up, and the other gets thrown down the stairs. And I'm like, I don't know why. I was watching it, my hands were getting sweaty, and I was uncomfortable. And I was like, I don't know why this is working so well, but it is. that's it's like I said. This is why I love your guys' marketing material. Like for Division 1 and 2, like it's so much story and world building in them, but like this actual cinematography in it is so good. And I'm just thinking about, I'm just going through all in my head now, and I'm sorry, I'm fanboying a little bit, but yeah.
Go ahead, be my guest.
yeah, just sit there reveling your own work. What so out of your actually, I want to talk about your portfolio in a minute. 'Cause it's a question I've had from someone, and it's a very good question. However,
All right.
in your portfolio, which trailer do you enjoy making the most? Out of the ones you posted, or which ones did you sort of have the most fun with?
I will have to open my own portfolio because
Don't worry, it's linked in chat. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's been a little while, and when you get to work on these movies, a lot of the time it's not like you do one at a time.
Yeah.
So you're working on several and jumping from one to the other, and everything gets a little bit blurry.
Actually, yeah, I've got a couple of questions about your portfolio. Because you have like so I'm going to put a shout out to Martin for asking this question, because it's quite a good question, and I don't know whether it's the OCD in me or what. You have a very nice conscious decision. You framed all your thumbnails.
Oh yes.
Now,
why?
yeah, as I say, what was because you've done that since day one, and it looks like a really conscious decision.
Well, I didn't do it. I just deleted the ones that didn't have it, or I updated the thumbnail to look like that. But the main reason is that as soon as you open Artstation, it doesn't matter if it's trending or Pix or whatever, you are absolutely bombarded by colors that are so close to each other that they just kind of blend into this noisy stuff of gorgeous things. I
Yeah.
have to say that because most of it, 99%, is awesome. And so I needed something to kind of say, hey, it's that guy, like right away. But I didn't want to be too much in your face that it's like, oh, that obnoxious guy again, whatever. So I said, okay, I'll just pick a frame and some layout that is kind of recognizable and still slick, I would say.
Yeah.
And just the color of the frame is just representing whatever program or whatever. In this case, the division was also orange, right?
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be color coded all nicely. It just so happens that Substance Designer, as well as Forza Horizon 4, as well as the division, they are all orange. So now it looks like everything is orange. But
well,
yeah.
There's one last question as well. You've got one of your division tracks. Now I've watched them all. I'm trying to see if there's a reason. One's red and one's orange. What's the red one?
Yeah. Well, this may be a little bit of spoilers. I don't know if anyone has been like finished it or what, but okay, you've been
now. 5,
so...
4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, here at your own peril. Go.
Okay, so you reach a certain point in the story that is supposed to kind of look like we made it. This is the end, and so you get the cinematic that we got to work on it. That is like a party in the garden or the backyard of the White House. Everyone is celebrating. There's fireworks and stuff, but then you start noticing that there's something weird going on.
Oh.
And then it's when you get presented with this end game faction, the Black Tusks, and they basically invade the entire map, which is awesome from a player standpoint. I guess it's a super interesting concept. And so they use a lot of like black and red colors in their lights and uniforms and stuff. So I wanted to also portray that, hey, this is something a little bit different. There's something going on here. So
well, you've done that. You've done. Well, you've looked at the question I've just asked. It's like, okay, something special about that one. Why is it like that? It's like, okay, that's a sick. Yeah. That's sick. That's dope.
And also, I was kind of sick of all the oranges, so I just
well, you
jumped at the
there,
opportunity.
Man, you've got level 80 in there. You're good. I mean, you have got. Okay, I'm gonna. This is OCD. I'm sorry. Is your motorcycle though? No frame.
I know. But that's because I'm going to get rid of it, so I just never.
Oh, that's sick. So,
but I'm going to replace it with something better. How about that?
Yeah, I'll take that. What Okay, so you say you're gonna personal stuff. I'm guessing when you say you're gonna replace it with something better.
Yeah.
What So what you think? What's the sort of your personal work direction at the moment? What is it you're trying to do? Improve? Without obviously giving away what your new project's gonna be.
Well, as I said, I'm focusing on learning about cinematography and storytelling, even narrative. Actually, I've been getting into screenplay writing and
Ooh.
stuff that kind of can support what I'm doing at the moment, and also so that it would eventually help me to write on scenes. Because I don't really just want to build an environment that is like, okay, I did this abandoned whatever, fill the blanks, and it looks cool, it's well executed, lighting is nice, and there you go, that's it. No, I said if I'm going to build an environment, I might as well do something really cool with it in terms of narrative and storytelling. Now that I have this code, now that I'm building the skills in the team.
That's interesting. That's So now when you're approaching it, so basically like when you approach a scene, whenever I approach a scene, it's like a set of goals in my head. Like it's not just about making a scene; it's about what I come out with
Mm-hmm.
the other end. So for
Oh
you,
yeah,
it's
for sure.
like, okay, I want to read this. The whole point of this scene is narrative and story, and the storytelling that happens within the design, rather than just a kick-ass looking environment. You want it to have a story to
Yeah,
it itself.
exactly.
That's sick, man. You so just want to okay. So I've just clicked in my head this looking at the Discord. So you're a mod in the Dynasty Empire,
Yes.
and if you don't mind me saying, you're one of the better people for critiquing. Although I know you've been busy recently, but
Oh,
I know
so sweet.
you gave me some great crit early days with my scene. I've seen you give some really good crit. Now, I've said for a while the reason that the Dynasty Empire is like probably one of the better art communities at the moment is because
What do you mean one of the best?
without shit on anyone else, I'm not going to name names, but it's definitely overtaken quite a few big names. But it's the quality of the feedback in a crit. And
Oh
for a bit, I've
yes,
been trying to
it's
think,
insane.
but I've been looking at you guys, and for me to learn myself, it's from a selfish point of view because I want to get better at analysing and critiquing people because it's part of my day job.
Yeah, that's a good
And I'm
point.
looking like, okay, why? So people like yourself and TJ, like you give great crits, really good information. I wonder if it's something to do with the fact that you guys, and it's similar to what Dynasty does as well. Because when I was asking him on the podcast when he came on, what's his viewpoint for critiquing, and it's all about this bigger picture. You almost blur the details, and it's like, how does the big scene look? And I know Dynasty says he does. Oh, sorry, Jeremy, I should say, does that. You do that. TJ said he did that. And I wonder if that's what part of what makes you guys such brilliant critiquers. Is that a word? Critiques.
It is
Critics.
now.
Critics is the word I'm looking for. What makes you great critics is this. I think it
Yeah,
might have something to do with that. The fact that you look at it as a
yeah.
bigger picture.
I don't necessarily think it's just because of that, but maybe it's just easier for people to go straight up into details that stick up to them instead of thinking, okay, what is this about? What do you need to convey? Or what is the framing of this? As opposed to say, the roughness on that dot is a little bit off. You need to fix that.
Almost ignore the obvious, like their stuff, which
Yeah.
is the obvious stuff. Yeah, because
And
I should dig out my crits which you gave me because there were some good ones. I'll post them in the chat later because I think you'll find them quite interesting. Do you have any pet peeves? So I'm going to reference Jeremy again because his one thing which ever since he said it, I'm like never forgetting that was laser lines. When he said where like a
oh
wall meets the floor, he should never see a straight line because it's just so natural. And that's one of the things
yeah.
he said he really keeps an eye out for. Do you have anything like that where you're like, if I see that, it just kills me?
There's tons of little things like that. Actually, I don't know if it was posted before, but not too long ago, I posted on the resource channel. There's this article on 9 little mistakes that everyone makes
Oh,
with composition, and
tangents.
it's like tangent. Yeah,
Hold
exactly.
on.
Like continuing edges from object to object and stuff that finishes awkwardly too near the end of the frame. Things like this.
That is,
So that
I've shared that around quite a bit to the artist in the
Yeah,
studio.
it's great. That was great.
Anything else that what any storytelling tropes which you think that's such a cliche or
Oh yes.
go on.
Actually, I have one that I personally hate so much and that I used to do when I was learning to do concept art. So this is more specifically for concept art, not for 3D, and that is what a lot of artists call the what is it? The stick salesman. And that is you draw a beautiful landscape, right? You put your focal point on one of the thirds, and then on top of the mountain, looking at this landscape, there is a dude that carries a giant stick. For whatever reason, it always carries a giant stick, longer than him.
Wait,
And
what's carrying a
just
giant
looking
stick?
into the things. Huh?
What's this? What's carrying a giant stick?
The what, sorry?
Well, sorry, can you repeat that? I sort of missed that. You said it's around the distance carrying a giant stick.
So there's used to, like a wizard staff or something like
Oh,
that.
sorry. Yes.
Yes, it's always there. It's always there. It's so funny to see.
Just so you
I
know,
guess we could
guys.
say the same with 3D and people doing the same things all over again, like your usual sci-fi stuff or stuff that is just abandoned just because it looks more interesting because there's breakup and there's vegetation and stuff. It can look really good. You can demonstrate a lot of technical skills, but
I'm gonna upset
maybe
him now for doing this, but I'm gonna have to give a shout out to Dirk with what he's doing in a moment because I like exactly what you're saying. So like, okay, I'm gonna guilty of doing the abandoned stuff because it's more interesting.
I think you need to do it actually
he's doing a very simple bedroom scene, and I've always said this: like the simple stuff, you can't hide. Like I can hide behind noise and that looks broken because it is broken. Whereas you do an everyday object. It's like I made a bed. Every person on the planet knows what a made bed looks like. And my concept artist used to say this to me back at college. I'd draw like aliens and stuff, and he was like, "Okay, cool." But I can't critique you on that because I don't know what that's meant to be like. He was like, draw stuff that you can show your mum. He was like, get your mum's mobile phone and draw her mobile phone. Because she knows exactly, she's not an artist, but she knows exactly what that's meant to look like. And when you show the drawing, she'd either go, that looks like my phone, or it doesn't. So I think it did something in there what you're on about with the making, don't always do the sort of cliche broken environment stuff. And like I said, I'm putting my hands up because I am doing that right now.
But the thing is, especially in the beginning, you kind of need to do that because you can't just approach a scene that you want to make as I'm going to make everything in the scene as complicated as possible, and I'm going to tackle all the things that I don't know about all at once because I'm awesome and I'm going to make it awesome. But it's probably not going to happen. Like you need to first learn your prop techniques, let's say, and building environments in Unreal. Maybe then you can focus on making your scenes storytelling wise interesting and all that stuff. So it's totally fine. It's just a stepping stone.
It's really interesting point that Marcel made, the critically lead artist, who's saying like being conscious of what your hero prop is. Like it's very easy to want to spend lots of time on every single prop and make every prop look really nice on their own. But when they come together, you need the hero prop to stand out from the other prop so that it is the hero prop.
And also another thing that I just thought about is wanting to do a ton of props that look great and compensate composition with that when you can really make a scene look pretty awesome just with the most basic materials and assets and shapes if say the lighting is on point and your focal point is great.
I have to admit that's something I do struggle with, is when you make a nice prop and you're like, right, this needs to be in a composition, and you sacrifice composition in order to get your prop in the scene or you can see it.
Yeah,
it's a very difficult, I think that's it's weird. It's almost like a confidence thing. It's like being okay with your prop you're really happy with being, front and center. It's a very difficult skill, though. It's something that I know that I struggle with quite a lot.
Yeah, and often when single artists are working on scene, or even let's say a group of 2-3 artists are working on a scene, it tends to not be huge, so they want to put everything in there. Whereas if you're working on, say, an open world game, props may be all around. You may not see them, or you may see a ton of them. So they just need to look the way they need to look, and they need to be consistent with the other stuff. And that's it. Then you build the scene with whatever props you have, instead of trying to, push your stuff like, look at it, it's so pretty.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's but it's hard though, because like if you've got a prop you spend a lot of time on and you're really proud of, and you're like, hey, I got a roughness bang on, and this is
Yeah,
something
of
I did
course.
on my last scene. I did this. I was like, I had like the roughness on the floor looking super good, and I had this really bizarre angle to try and like catch the that light skim. And I rendered it out. And I was
Yes.
in the Discord on screen share, and I was just like, "So guys, I've got my renders. What do you think?" And they're like, "What the fuck's that one?" I was like, "Yeah, look at the roughness." And like, "Yeah, but it's a terrible shot." I was like, oh yeah, I suppose you're right."
Yeah, guilty as charged as well. It's often a thing when you're texturing a prop and you're spinning the light, and you make this lighting setup that makes it look awesome. And then you put it in the engine, it's like, what the hell is that?
Oh man, dude, this is what I'm such a like a proponent for. Especially materials. Materials is what I like to focus on, and I'm just in the process of building some shaders, and I'm like, I was talking to a few guys about materials, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the idea of like, certain people can do it because they've got like 15 years of experience behind them, but like new artists with like lots of material balls, and it's like,
Oh,
I'll say
yes.
this forever. I'll say this forever that Marmoset makes anything look good. I could throw
Yeah.
literally a plain grey sphere into Marmoset with a nice light cap and some reflections, and that looks good. So it's like
Yes. Yes.
I always say, like, if you're making materials, take them into Unreal or Unity and make a shader and make it a game ready asset, and be like, right, I don't only know how to make materials, I know how to implement a material and incorporate it into a scene. I think that's the way to
Mm-hmm.
be that step further in your craft. And it's the exact same with Marmoset. Like, sorry,
Yeah,
with
it's
props.
really hard to let go and just kind of go to whatever output you're going to be working with, whatever render engine or game engine. Just look at it there and work back and forth. Because between programs, there's usually quite a difference in how
Mm,
shaders are handled. For example, Substance Painter tends to render stuff a little bit
mm-hmm.
strangely, because of the HDRIs and the way it handles like metalness and roughness. So it's really important to really learn about getting into whatever it is, if it's, Houdini, or if it's Unreal, just getting there and making sure that it looks good there.
I do think it comes back to confidence though. Like when you're a young artist new to this stuff, you're thinking, oh, any recruiter looks at this, it's gotta be look as good as possible. It's gotta look as good as possible,
Yeah, yeah.
and
You need the flashy stuff. You need to
yeah,
show off.
and as you get more experience, I do think you eventually go, right, I know, because you know what you're looking for. You stop going, this is a look as good as possible. You think of it from how you hope an experienced artist looks at it, which is like, oh, does it work in the engine? Does it still look good? You almost do like what we just spoke about in terms of your critiques. You don't focus on the micro detail, you focus on the bigger picture and how it works.
Hmm.
But I
For
genuinely
sure.
believe that only comes with experience and confidence. I think it's very hard to say to like a 19-year-old trying to get into the games industry, dude, don't worry about a really flashy render. Make sure it works in the engine, and like even though you might sacrifice a 2% quality decrease, the fact that you got it in an engine working is like tenfold more important. And
Yes.
I can't see a young artist. It's a very hard thing to get over, and if you can do that, like I give all kudos to you. But I think that's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah,
I struggle
and
now.
also an important thing to point out is, especially if either you're a student trying to get a job, or you are a, say, a junior artist, uh, the only person that you're really trying to impress is yourself, because people that are either trying to hire you, or that are your, say, your leads or seniors, they know what's going on. They know that if this looks flashy, oh, that's because you render it on Marmoset or whatever. They know what's going on. So I would say just try to drop it and focus on the actual output.
You know what? I was talking to one of my friends yesterday or the day before about this, because he struggles a bit with like liking his own work. And I know every artist will struggle with this. They hate their own creations. It's just natural.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm the sort of person that's like, I'm really happy with what I create because I know my weaknesses and I'm willing to accept them. But also, I hype up everyone else, and I've got every time someone posts something cool, I'm like, yeah, great, this is sick. I drew it back to, if you could love your own work or accept your own work for what it is, I think it makes you a lot happier, but also you become like able to love everyone else a lot more and love everyone else's
Oh
work,
yeah.
and you get
Oh yeah.
hyped more. If you're worried about hating your own work and you're just like, that isn't as good as it could be, or that isn't as good as it could be, I didn't do that bit as good as I wanted, it's very easy to beat yourself down to the point where you're worried about commenting on anyone else because
Yeah,
you feel like you're inferior.
yeah, I was quite worried about that actually uh, when I was more junior. Not that I am super senior right now or anything, but uh, I was quite perfectionist to the point that it would take me forever to do anything, and then I just had to learn how to drop it. Um,
That's literally a talent in
it's
itself. It's been able to do, like you said,
yeah.
let go.
You have to get into the mindset of thinking back or whatever task you've been working on, and really focus on actionable stuff that you can tick boxes on. Say, I finished this part of the workflow in however many days I allocated, and I researched this and I learned at least 1%. I'm 1% better. That's it. Like,
Yeah,
if you're putting in the work, it doesn't really matter if your work is sick from piece to piece, or just 1% better, because you're moving forward. And
there's a
if you're worrying too much about being flashy with every piece, you're probably going to have a bad time, because sooner or later you're going to hit that big wall of, ooh, what do I learn now? How
yeah.
do I go forward?
There's a writer who said something quite similar. I can't remember what his name is. But he's basically like, even though you make shit one day, like you make it to whatever creative thing is, like one day it just is shit. Whatever you made is terrible. It doesn't matter,
Yep.
because the next day you can make something amazing from that, because of that experience or because of that. It's just about like actually just almost go through the motions.
Yeah, and
Um,
at the very least, even if the quality is kind of almost the same, at the very least you're exercising the discipline to actually be working on stuff, and uh, knowing how to make estimates, let's say, on your task, which is quite important actually in a studio position.
mm.
Or yeah.
So, my friend, we're gonna wrap up soon. I'm gonna ask you the same question I ask everyone else. So I'm gonna put you on the spot a bit here. I did warn you about this because I never do.
Ooh.
You go back to you in, I'm gonna say, your second year or first year university. Go back to that person. If you could say one thing to that person that you've learned along your journey so far, because you're in your second AAA studio and you're killing it. What would you say to them now from stuff you've learned?
I think I would say learn to balance your work, even if back then it wasn't technically work. So uh, whatever 3D stuff you're working on, it doesn't actually matter if you're doing characters or 2D, whatever. Learn to balance it, because even if you really, really push hard for something, you're going to break yourself. Like, burnout is a real thing, and you really need to learn how to deal with that. And it's different for every person. So it's fine to be around the limits and kind of prove test the waters, see where that is.
Yeah. Well, you got to push to the wall in order to know where the wall is.
Yeah, and right now with all the hustle culture that is all around the internet, it's kind of very, very easy to get lost in the I need to do more, I need to do more, I need to do more. There's so much people putting crazy stuff on Artstation every day, and I need to get better than this and that. But honestly, if you try to catch up with everyone, then
Yeah.
you just don't really have time for anything
Well,
else, and
the
it's just sad.
the problem with it is, and Artstation actually, you know what? I've just thought this in my head, and I'm actually quite impressed by this. Artstation reminds me a bit of Instagram. Like
Oh yeah,
Instagram, I
of course.
you don't really you don't take it literally, because you're basically comparing someone's highlight reels to your behind the scenes. And I think it's very easy to do that to Artstation. You look at a highlight reel
Yeah.
of someone's work. You don't see the hours where they've like, breaking down when they couldn't do something, or they're really struggling. You don't see any
And
of that.
for your work, you know exactly everything that is wrong.
Exactly.
So it's not a fair comparison, but for your brain, it's just too easy of a response and quick response to feel, oh my god, look at that! It's awesome, it's inspiring, but oh my god, I need to do more.
Man, it is a difficult thing, dude.
So yeah,
we're gonna wrap up. Dude, I'm gonna get you back on again. This has been a great conversation, and I'm really glad I learned a bit about what it is you do. Because, like I said, I've never heard of a cinematic environment artist until I saw you pop up on LinkedIn that you were joining massive with that, and it's super cool to see what you're doing. Like, it sounds amazing. Sounds like a dream job a little bit.
Yeah, it's
so
really fun.
thank you very much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it, and
Thank you
hopefully I
for
get you back
having me.
on.
Of course.
So, thank you everyone for tuning in. Coming from Jeremy's stream, appreciate you guys swinging by. Episode 10's over. I'm really glad we got to number 10. It feels like it's only just started like last week. If you want to keep up with the news for upcoming guests and the VODs, the links are down below for my Twitter and my Artstation. I'll keep both of them up to date with all the latest information. Links to also the SoundCloud, the iTunes, and the Spotify. If you guys could swing by and just give a follow or like, it makes a massive difference to me. But yeah, wrapping up. Abel, thank you very much, dude.
Thank you for having me.